Red Gold, autobiographical sketches inspired by The Healers, a book by Aikwa Amar, also by his character Araba Jeshua and her 8 steps for healing as prompted and facilitated by the healer Damfu. Here's my take, and here are the autobiographical sketches. The title of this work is called Red Gold. Let's begin. The North Carolina nights had long overtaken the day, and the bitter cold forced us to move our anvils from under the old pecan tree to inside. Son, I'll carry the anvils. You grab the ball-peen hammers. Okay, I'll take the screwdrivers and chisels. Be careful. Those chisels are sharp. Dad brought buckets for the brass, barrels for the steel, and red gold. These replaced our kitchen table, and the forged scissors replaced knives for snipping the brass from the charred wires. He hung one of those green Korean War wool army blankets over the door to keep the metal dust from overtaking the rest of our modest home. Our kitchen had morphed into our workshop. Cold weather wasn't about to stop Getty's salvage. Our family business was more than a way to make money. Dad's starched uniforms would be delivered on Wednesdays, dark blue pants with a lighter blue shirt. On each was a label, Getty. That's what people called him, Getty, or Mr. Getty. He was his own boss. He was his own man. The business forged a way for me to one day do the same. His heart was as big as his hands were rough. Sometimes people asked for financial help. He hired them, even when we didn't need them, rather than to give them a handout. He wanted them to keep their dignity. He and my mother, Maggie Tucker, had started the business together. Unfortunately, they didn't stay together. Last year, she moved away, taking me to Brooklyn with her. This year, I was with Dad, and tonight, like many nights, it was just me and him pounding, screwing, chiseling, and snipping in search of the red gold. It was the most profitable of the metals we recycled. During the day, we transformed junk cars and trucks with motors and transmissions, rear ends, and heavy axles into scrap metal. We worked in steel, tin, aluminum, die-cast, and copper. Copper fetched the most on the market. Copper was the red gold. While chiseling the copper from the armatures required the most skill, my favorites were the generator and starter cylinders. After removing the armature, I pounded bam, 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 aiming for the 2 screws on opposite sides of the steel cylinders. Dad could loosen them with one hit. Bam! My smaller hammer and arms required many more tries. I would get it this time. I positioned it solidly on my smaller anvil again and hit it as hard as I could. Bam! Then I reached for the flathead screwdriver. It took both hands to release the screws and wad of red gold tightly wound around metal flanges. Yes! I must have been 6 years old, and the joy of accomplishment filled me each time I chunked the red gold into the barrel. Dad's approving smile would say, "That's my boy." It was dirty work, but it didn't feel like work, and in no way felt like dirt. It felt like love, and I felt powerful. The weekends were a whole different story. On Saturday mornings, I'd wake up early at my Aunt Nell's house, who lived on Wilmington Road. She and Uncle Ballard had a piano and a black and white television set. My slightly older cousins, Priscilla and Jean, and I would watch Bugs Bunny, Beep Beep, The Road Runner, and other cartoons. Then came The Lone Ranger, and just before heading outside, Tarzan. Once outside, I'd grab a low-hanging branch, swinging and belting out a Tarzan-like yodel to strike fear into my imaginary opponents. For that moment, I was Tarzan, strong, smart, a friend and protector to the animals that only he could talk to. Plus, he had Cheetah and the beautiful Jane. Then there were those bumbling, idiotic natives who weren't even worthy adversaries. My yell and yodel was that of the king of the jungle, and I didn't want to be anything like those who looked most like me. Of course, I didn't think of those things then. I was just having fun on a Saturday morning, laughing and being brave. I didn't know the psychic abuse or false ideas that were being implanted and induced. One day, walking to number 10, our elementary school, another black student hurled and insulted me. "You old black." Before he got from the B in black to the K, we were throwing punches and rolling on the ground. Mission accomplished. Tarzan's producers must have celebrated. The residuals of fear from our captivity, mingled with innocent, media-induced menticide, convinced me to feel ashamed of the African part of me, to break apart, way apart from it. It was to become the other, the alien script in my history, the alien wound in me. Though I couldn't identify the commander, their orders were clear: control this African part or kill it. Is that what I was trying to do when I punched my schoolmate who hurled my Africanness at me? Fear and fear-mongering was shame's constant companion. "Welcome to Fayetteville, home of the Ku Klux Klan," read the gigantic billboard that greeted us when we entered town from the South Carolina side of Interstate 95. No one talked about it directly, but when I asked about it, I could sense there was something they were trying to protect me from. It was 1960. These currents, shame, alienation, and fear, took me far away from the kitchen workshop, from the hammers pounding, the metallic dust, the army blanket doors, the red gold, and far from the 6-year-old feeling power and love affirmed by collective work. And that's my boy. Now I felt power vicariously by pretending to be white Tarzan dominating Africans. Somehow, this felt safer too. Back with Mom in Brooklyn, I'd reached for the yellow tin of Nunau hair slick dressing pomade on Saturday night. My spiraling kinks would yield under the incessant strokes of my wide wooden brush. It wasn't enough to see them forming. I'd run my hands over them while looking into the mirror. Then I reached for the preserver, the stocking cap. It would keep them from going back. I was going to be sharp for church tomorrow.